I'm Dr. Behzad Bernous, though many people know me simply as Dr. B or Dr. Beebe. Alan Watts once said, trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. My guest today understands that deeply. He describes himself as a soul having a human experience. He adds, I've always had a hard time defining myself because I'm constantly exploring the depth of my mind, my heart, and my soul. To tell you who I am is, in a way, to place myself in a box, just so you can have a sense of how I show up in your world. Born in Iran and having lived much of his life in the US, he believes he belongs everywhere and nowhere at once. For over 2 decades, his love for cinema has guided him through the world of visual storytelling, weaving art, emotion, and meaning. Today, his work lives where mindfulness, creativity, and healing meet. He teaches mindfulness, leads men's retreats, and supports others through transformative and psychedelic-assisted integration. He adds, quote, I love helping people reconnect to their hearts, discover their gifts, and welcome awareness into their lives, and maybe experience moments of awe, end quote. Through responsibility to awe and more recently Astana, he creates spaces for stillness, community, and the sacred within the ordinary. Please join me in welcoming my friend and guest, Māhā, known to some as Mahyar. Welcome to Astana, Mahyar.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the other side of the cameras.
Yeah, how does it feel?
Strange. I chose to be behind the camera, and now things have shifted. So I guess adapting to the new changes and admiring it and have more respect and compassion for people that they have to be in front of camera.
You are a very good looking guy. Being in front of camera, I'm sure, is a good thing. So I know a lot of people know you because you've done a lot of work in behind the camera, and that has been your passion. But recently, and I know you personally, that's why I'm saying that you've dedicated a lot of your time and energy into mindfulness, and you went through a lot of training and getting credentials and things like that. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I think I was in film school when you and we met, and I was 19 or 20, and we were shooting a lot of photos and videos, and that's where my passion was. And I think even back in the day, I wanted to do something more meaningful or impactful with the video work. And throughout the years, that kind of shifted because, when you start working in Hollywood or in a business, you realize you don't always have, the end saying or the final saying. So through personal experiences and having, some traumas come into my life, I found meditation and mindfulness, and it helped me center myself, helped me understand where my mind goes and how my mind needs to be trained not to go into different places, especially for someone who's creative. I think we allow our mind to have this freedom to explore. We give our mind this power to use the imagination, and if you don't really know what to do with it, then you end up paying for it, through stress or through whatever else that might happen. So it really helped me as an artist, as a filmmaker, video creator, to realize imagination is a beautiful tool, but what do you do with the rest of the time when you're not creating? And I think mindfulness or meditation really taught me how my brain functions, how my brain works. So
But how did you get into mindfulness? That's maybe I'm interested to know because you have always been creative and artistic individual, but you felt like a pull towards it. How did you got into this?
So it's something I haven't shared openly that I like to share with you
Please.
because you and I we have that background is I feel like I can openly talk about this, and that's what really brought me to mindfulness was understanding what spirituality really means to me. So it started with those experiences, those practices. And, you know, when you're in a spiritual path, meditation usually is one of the ones that comes along, and you're like, oh, what is meditation? What does it do? Everyone talks about it. And I had this opportunity to start going to this meditation studio and really exploring. But the beginning of it, I think the seed was through practice in the spirituality and trying to understand what spirituality really means to me. And meditation became one of those tools.
So this was more like a gradual process, you're saying? It was not one big event that really kind of convinced you to pursue that?
It was gradual, but when I started to really take it seriously was when I had this personal incident. It was a breakup, and it was a relative of mine, you know, getting sick. So I had two big thing in my life that I had to deal with, and I really didn't know what to do with it. And a relative came and said, "Hey, there's a meditation studio just opening up down the street. I think you should give it a try." And that's when I started really practicing every day. I got a unlimited membership. I went to classes, you know, 3 classes a day.
Wow.
Sometimes, you know, the staff were worried about me. They're like, "This is your third class. Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think so. I'm going to the third one. I'll let you know after the third one, or you know, this, you know, we'll figure it out together." And, you know, I was really open, and I think that's when was the beginning of my journey, you know, to practicing this seriously on a daily basis, and you know, finding out what actual real meditation practice is.
And there is a difference between mindfulness and meditation because there are so many nuances there. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what mindfulness is about? Because these days everybody talks about mindfulness. So hearing it from you, it's a good thing for people to get a better understanding of the definition of mindfulness.
Sure. Mindfulness is a practice of staying present with our thoughts and feeling without judgment and being curious. It's very simple, but it's also kind of difficult to practice if you don't have the right tools for it. The roots of it, you know, comes from Buddhism, which is 2,400 years old. But some great teachers back in 70s, like Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, Sharon Salzberg, they brought this practice to the West, and through science, they kind of showed, you know, that this is something that works for us, for our mental health, for our physical health. You know, because in the West, we you know, we kind of put everything based on science. You know, has to have 10 years of, you know, studies and show that is improving something. And they really brought it and turned it into a secular practice. So you don't have to believe in Buddhism or become a Buddhist to really practice this, which is great actually. At least from where I come from personally, and a lot of people that I know, a lot of us have, you know, issues or traumas, you know, growing up, you know, in a religious community or country or whatnot. And this was a practice that really doesn't tell you you have to believe in something. It's just gives you the right tool to sit and understand how your mind works and, you know, the benefits on.
So basically, what you said, important points for me is that non judgmental observation of your thoughts, right? And this, can you tell me a little bit more about how people achieve this? Because I guess part of the being judgmental is inherently in us. That comes from our superego, comes from our cultural background. How do people achieve that non judgmental? Because in my line of work, I see one of the biggest problems people have is the inner conflicts, the conflicts between the superego and ego or it. So achieving that non-judgmental approach is a big deal. Are there any ways in mindfulness that you prescribe and help people to reach to that non-judgmental view of themselves?
Good question. I think what really works hand in hand with the non-judgmental is to bring in the curiosity and the beginner's mind, as we call it. The non-judgmental part really comes and helps and works when you sit and you're frustrated that your thoughts constantly are taking over your attention or your feelings. And most people at that point, they give up or they say, see, this is not for me. But if you don't have that judgmental and you say, it's okay, I'm interested why this thought or why this feeling came up. Really interesting, why whenever I sit to meditate, these thoughts and feelings, they come, to me. That takes away the judgmental part of it. That takes away the part that this is not for me, I can't do this, and mix it into something that you can practice. You can be with it at that moment, learning that I can have anchors in mindfulness. We have 3 anchors, so we work with our breath, body scan, and sound. So you can kindly bring yourself to one of those anchors and say, okay, let me go back into it. Now, what you're saying with your practice, I don't want to get into it unless you want to. It's a little bit, more in depth when we're talking about ego and bringing that in. I usually don't do that unless someone has some sort of a practice or they're curious, they want to come and talk to me separately about it. We want to make it very simple, because our mind is already, complicated and likes to make things complicated. But when you make a practice simple, just to say, thoughts are okay, feelings are okay, they're just thoughts and feelings. Do not attach yourself to it. Come back to your anchor, kindly talk to yourself.
Self. So that's what I'm hearing. You're trying to anchor it back to the self. I recall that when I started my music lessons back when I was a teenager, I had a really great teacher that he tried to teach us about mindfulness, but his approach was a bit different. In a way, he was saying that, for example, since you're playing guitar, your fingers, your hands needs to be different now and feeling different. Pay attention to your fingers. When you next time you have a bite from an apple, I want you to pay attention to the texture, to the smell, how you taste it. So basically, he was prescribing mindfulness as a practice, as a lifestyle, not necessarily that I want to sit, for 5-10 minutes and meditate, but mindfulness as a way of living. So when you eat, when you walk, when you talk, and when you play an instrument, he was saying that, do you see a merit in that making it as a lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the people I remember personally listening and learning this from is Sam Harris. He talks about how mindfulness later kind of leaks into your life and becomes your lifestyle, it becomes part of you. You start paying attention because you're working with these thoughts and you're working with these feelings, and you see the thought coming again or maybe trying to distract you. So when the whole point of it is to be present for that little moment of practice, and later on and throughout our life, as we go on driving or whatever it might be, talking to someone, we can practice being present, being fully present at this moment, so we can observe what's happening or observe our thoughts or feelings. Otherwise, we get lost in thoughts.
Without drawing any conclusion, I'm assuming when you say observing our thoughts is, okay, I'm thinking about stressful situations that I'm in, for example. When this comes up, what you're saying is that just observe it, don't draw any conclusion from it, right?
Exactly.
So, but then when you said something about that, paying attention to thoughts rising from nothingness, more like a Buddhism approach, I guess a part of that goes into this, that to let go of any thoughts in order to be non-attached and being detached. So is this the state that you're proposing? Is it in between, that you're observing your thoughts, you're not drawing any conclusion, but you're not going into that why the thoughts is coming up? Let's end this even process of thoughts coming up to the surface, right?
Yeah, because when that happens, if you get attached to it, then you want to know why this is happening, why this feeling again, or why this thought. But when you look at it as, okay, it's just this thought came, interesting, there's no attachment, I'm going to let it go now, then that thought probably won't come back, to try to distract you because you paid attention to it, you allow it to be seen by practicing non-attachment, as you said, which is, also one of those, Buddhist philosophies. And by that, you can understand that eventually that these are just thoughts and these are just feelings. And a lot of it has happened in the past, maybe, and there's no reason to get attached to it. I can let it go. So you kind of understand and detach yourself from what's happening in this moment, when it comes to these thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. They're
Yes.
just thoughts.
But what if the thought, and I know I might be a bit harsh in this point, but what if the thought that is coming up is a very important thought and is a very relevant issue that is in my life right now and needs my attention? How about that? For example, if it's something serious, I have certain responsibilities, or one of my relatives is not in good health, or something really important. What then? I mean, how do we approach it? Do we approach that thought differently than a thought that, oh, I rather change my car, I like to change my house? Those things, yeah, not that serious. But what if the thought is really something important that, my heart has been hurting? Maybe I should go and see a doctor. I mean, do we approach them differently, these thoughts?
So let me be a little clear. Are you asking if this happens throughout the meditation or just in general?
During the time that you're meditating, the thoughts coming up, you said we are observing them. So what if the thought that is coming up, since we're sitting and paying attention, is an important thing that we need to attend to it?
Sure, if it's an emergency, you feeling discomfort or you feeling that I need to pay attention to this. For instance, it feels weird in my chest. I'm having a hard time breathing. Then yeah, you want to stop at that point, call 911, or attend to that need. But understand that our mind's trying to play this trick with us, trying to play this role of being this master, trying to distract you. Why are you sitting and why are you trying to go to this state? My job is to keep you protected by repeating patterns, by bringing up memories, making sure that nothing bad's going to happen. So if this happens throughout the meditation, understand, I think we're intellectual enough to know if this is the mind playing games, or no, if I need to physically attend to something, I need to do it.
Yep.
So we had an example, someone asked in the last workshop, I'm meditating and a fly comes, sit on my face. What do I do? Well, at this point, you have a choice. You can react to it, which we usually do. We move our hand, try to, push the fly away. Or you can say, let me sit with this and see, instead of reacting to it, can I be with this discomfort of fly on my, but one of the other thing is if you're meditating and you open your eyes and there's a snake, you do want to react. You don't want to sit at that point.
Good to know. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, there's danger. You need to react at this point. But eventually, I think with your question, which is really interesting to me, is we learn throughout our life. When you ask earlier, when a thought arises or a discomfort arises, how do I want to attend to this at this moment? Do I want to react to this, or do I want to remind myself based on my practice that this shall pass too? It's just a thought.
So sitting with it in a way is important, non-judgmental, but then sitting with it and tolerating it, right?
I wouldn't say tolerating because, well, let me ask you a question. When it comes to psychology and when someone is having a hard time or, with a negative, thought pattern, as a therapist, as a psychologist, what is your prescription?
For the negative thoughts?
Yeah, for the negative pattern of thoughts that they experiencing on constant basis.
Depends on your school of psychology that you're practicing, because there are different levels. If you're, for example, working as a cognitive behavioral therapy like CBT, you would go after this validity of the thought. Is it really valid? Is it catastrophizing? There are certain patterns you find out, and then you try to rationally convince the person that this is irrelevant. So it's not really important because there are certain patterns. But the way I work is psychodynamic, is not about just the thought, just going deeper and why this thought and why now? What does it represent? Is it a symbolic representation of a bigger desire within me that is presenting itself? Is it more like obsessional thoughts? Is it so? It depends on which school, which approach we take. There are different ways, but maybe the easiest one would be they try to convince you that look at it, evaluate it. If it's not reasonable, if it's not really valid, don't use too much of your energy entertaining it.
So in some ways, it's kind of similar to the mindfulness practice, from my understanding, right? To observe it, not to be judgmental about it, and to be curious about it too, right?
Yes, but then one difference, I guess the difference in psychology is we use a lot of the conscious ego and try to analyze. And the reason is we believe that, I don't want to turn it that way, but we believe that the conscious attention to the unconscious materials that are coming up to the surface is the key. And the conscious, in order to be able to assess the situation, the ego needs to be active. So it might be called a little bit like judgmental approach towards it, because ego, in a sense, analyze it and try to understand that is it reasonable or not, or is it irrational fear that is surfacing. But then the way we do it in mindfulness, what I'm understanding is we try to put the ego on hold at least for a while, right?
Let me get back to that part.
Okay.
Let me process it. I don't have an answer for it at the moment, but what I can tell you is, I think when it comes to our thoughts, when it comes to the conscious and the subconscious, we do want to give these thoughts the attention that they need.
Okay.
So we don't want to push them away. We don't want to. A lot of the misunderstanding with meditation, as you probably heard, is don't think about negative thoughts, or don't think about this. With mindfulness, we actually allow these thoughts to come and to go. And I think the suffering, the issue is when you get attached to those thoughts. You see them as a part of yourself. You see that as your identity. But when you try to train yourself and train your mind that I am not these thoughts, then things start to change. Things start to shift a little bit. Now, when it comes to with ego, playing and meditation, I think what really comes up for me, what really rises at this moment, is ego also needs attention as well too. We need to work on that ego. The ego needs the attention. The ego is part of the experience, from my understanding. So it will be there. It would eventually be part of that experience when that thought or the feeling comes up or arises. And you can work with it at that point. I don't think we can ignore it or we can push it away. Does that make sense?
Yes, but then we're talking about thoughts. What if something that is coming up is not necessarily a thought, but it's more like a memory, a traumatic memory that really happened, and that is coming up to the surface as I'm paying attention to it? What about then? What do we do with that memory that is coming up? Because you mentioned something like that. The thought is not me, I'm not identifying it. You're absolutely right. I want to have a bigger house or a better car. It's not really who I am. I get that. But what if it's something about that, oh my God, I just remember the trauma that I experienced 10 years ago or 2 months ago or when I was a child. That was me. That's part of what happened to me. What do we do with those memories that are coming up?
Good question. I think what I can what I can work with here is going back to my trauma sensitive trainings and say, you know, understand your threshold and see how deep you want to sit with that trauma, with that thought, you know. What can I do with it at this moment? You know, is it going to really solve anything? Is it necessary for me to really allow this to be here at this moment? And if it's getting to the point that if it's really pushing you over your threshold, then at that point you need to stop your meditation. You know, there's always an end. Nothing is permanent. And that practice at that point can also be done. You know, you don't want to go any further with it. And that's what my practice, that's what my training has told me, that know your limit and listen to. That's what my teaching and my training is. Trust your intuition. Know that you have hit the limit. Know that that fly sitting on your face now at this point is not allowing you to really practice and sit. You getting angry no matter what you do, how curious you are. The fly is really bothering you. Stop the practice, you know, see what you want to do with it. And it's a tricky one because you have to understand, am I sitting in a retreat? Am I, you know, doing a full day of meditation, or is this a 20 minutes? But I think it's really important for people, based on my own experience, because that happened to me at the retreat, to know that, okay, at this point I need to stop my meditation. This is not going anywhere.
Okay. So there were times for you that what I'm hearing is that you reach to a point that you say that I better stop this right now and interrupt this flow, whatever that is.
Yeah, yeah. Because at that point, I don't think really trying to be curious or sitting with and trying to explain to yourself that this is just a trauma. I'm not, you know, part of it. You know, I'm not associating myself with this. It might not be useful, you know. It's like going to the gym. At some point, your body is tired and you're like, I'm done for the day, you know. I can't push this anymore. And that's when you cut it, when, you know, when you're done. Our brain, even at the gym, when we're physically working out, usually wants to tell us sooner that, hey, you know, you're
Yeah.
exhausting me. Let's stop right here. You know, don't do the next, you know, next push up, next round. Let's done. But you know you can do it. So you can push that a little bit, but you know at this point this is not going to be beneficial. There's pain. And that's the same thing in meditation. I'm experiencing pain at this moment. So you don't want to sit with that. This is where you want to probably end your
Yeah.
practice.
And like everything, I am assuming that there could be, I'm sure, a lot of positive effects, but there could also be some possible negative, adverse, you know, side effects of mindfulness or meditation. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Nobody wants to go into this.
Right?
Not my teachers, not a lot of people. We're trying to be, I guess, in some ways positive and empowering. But I always tell people meditation is a tool and it's not for everyone. You have to really understand where you are mentally and emotionally in life and how much do you want to get deeper in this practice. There are some effects that I've read through studies and through, you know, personal experiences that are out there. But yeah, you want to evaluate. If you go on a retreat, you know, either a 4-day or a 10-day silent meditation, you have to answer a questionnaire. They're going to ask you, how are you mentally in your life right now? Are you on medication? Is there, you know, a big event happening in your life, you know, that you want to share with us? And they evaluate and they say, you know, maybe at this point, you know, you may want to not be here and sit for 12 hours a day and meditate. So yeah, there's some evaluation that goes, you know, before, but you know that's why people start with, you know, 5 minutes to 20 minutes a day, and they see if they want to push that limit or not. 12 hours or plus a day at a silent retreat for 4 or 5 days sometimes can be, you know, not for everyone.
Yeah. And the reason I'm saying that, you know, there has been some, you know, there are some researchers that working on finding everything could have positive and negative effects. Even psychotherapy, a lot of times it could make things worse. And we always tell them that, and I've had clients that I directly told them, look, I think you're better off not continuing therapy based on where you are at, or your personality, or your biological, psychological composition, in a sense. Because some people have predispositions like schizophrenia, bipolar, schizoaffective, psychotic, delusional issues. And those people, usually there is a defense mechanism that keeps things in place and does not allow the psyche to just get overrun by all kinds of thoughts and feelings and urges. But the reason I'm saying is that because I've seen research, they say that if the person is not able and high functioning, like you said, and you're like yourself, then the person could be putting himself or herself in danger of bringing up certain urges or thoughts that have been repressed by the defense mechanism and now coming up. And then I've seen even research showing that some people ended up, I was reading, was interesting, 2 monks I was reading said that after a 10-day retreat things, they ended up having psychotic breaks because of spending too much time paying attention to things that the brain usually tries to monitor and subside them in a way that they don't come up to the surface all the time.
You need to know your limits. You need to listen to your intuition. Body and mind are two intelligence organs that we need to start paying more attention to it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for anyone who's listening to this and is interested, I think David Treleaven has done some work on trauma sensitive mindfulness. He has a book that I recommend for people to look into, and he does also talk about how long retreats is not for everybody. With that being said, I never try to push or promote mindfulness meditation and say this is the only and this is the one tool that you have to use. See if it's for you. If it's not, then there's so many other tools, like you mentioned, therapy,
medications
for some cases, yeah. And see if that works or not.
So are you let me ask you this, do you agree that maybe we would be better off approach this in more like a team approach for people that maybe have some, and I'm sure you said that there are questionnaires you ask, and if you see someone is suffering from mental health, you tell them that, go see a therapist, right? And then the same way as psychologists, when we see someone, then we assess how bad is this depression, right, or anxiety. If it's really bad, then we say, you also need to see a psychiatrist, because the approach is a combination of medication, therapy, and maybe mindfulness and meditation, right? So what I'm saying is that I think the right way to do it is do it more like in a team setting approach, right?
I don't know if that would be the beginning approach to it, but I can tell you about my experience and my training. So I got trained at UCLA under the supervision of Dinah Winston and Marvin Bilzer, and our approach was definitely science-based, trauma-informed. And one thing that people don't know that maybe I can share, and to answer your question, is us as mindfulness teacher, at least for instance the program that I was trained at, while we doing a guided meditation, when we teach people in a group setting, for instance, or one-on-one, we actually look at people's body and face and see how they are doing with their practice. If they see,
as they're practicing.
So if they're restless, then we want to basically bring the guidance in a way that it can be maybe more gentle. We can bring them out of whatever is happening. Also make sure other people in the group are not experiencing what they are experiencing, so they are also comfortable. And sometimes before the class starts, or you even mention it throughout, if someone's having a hard time, if you're having a hard time, you may want to open your eyes and maybe stand up, take a break. And this is the trauma-informed approach to it. So now going back to, what you ask, for me personally, if I want to speak about my own personal experience, I started my serious meditation practice with therapy actually, and I've been a big proponent of talk therapy. I tell all my friends and family how impactful this practice has been for me, and I think they work really good hand in hand. So because when a difficult thought comes up, pops out of nowhere, let's say a childhood memory, whatnot, and you're sitting, you're like, interesting, why did this thought come up? It bothers you to the point that you're thinking about it the next day. The good thing is you can actually go to your therapist and you can say, hey, this memory popped up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. I didn't even know my brain actually stored this memory. How, let's explore this a little bit more,
like that,
So
yeah.
going back to what you were saying is, I can look at it and say, oh, this memory, non-attachment, let it go, or no, I need to pay attention to this. This is something that I'm thinking 2 days after my meditation. It could be a dream even.
Yeah.
So I
That
always,
quote comes up, right? This is great. But honestly, Maha, let me ask you something. What you're saying is fantastic. I think this is great and this is very helpful. But my question is, these days, the youngsters and even all of us, we just being so attached to our cell phones and social media and things. How many people do you have? What is the percentage of people that they are this thoughtful and insightful, that they sit, they meditate, they pay attention to what comes up, say, okay, I want to go talk to my therapist about it. Is it really, do you see it being as popular with the younger generations?
absolutely, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
great.
I can say that, at least for me, I'm I'm hopeful with Gen Z.
Yeah, I know you're always a hopeful person. I can say that.
I try to, but I'm really hopeful. I found them to be very intelligent, and they tapping into spirituality way earlier in life than I think you
Really?
and I we have. A lot of younger people are interested in meditation. I remember I was at this talk, and someone asked Krishna Das, he's a friend of Ram Dass, one of my teachers. He said, do I need to go to India if I want to, get deep in my spiritual practice? And he said, no, back in 1970s, we had 6 books, or 60s, we had 6 books about the spirituality. But right now we have more than, I think, 2,500, if not more, of meditation apps. So
Wow.
there are a lot of tools and information out there, and I really truly see a lot of younger people are interested into meditation. I think my cousin, who's 22 years old, he's reading Thich Nhat Hanh's book, which
Yeah.
learn about him as a Buddhist monk later in life, and I was so surprised and shocked because the information is out there, because people have access to really, hey, is this for me?
Is it because of that, you think, or because the life has gone so difficult that younger generations cannot really leave their parents' house, and because of the financial pressure, and maybe when the pressure goes up, we try to find a different way of dealing with the stress of life, that maybe they are being more attracted towards this kind of a deep old school, because what you're saying is more than 2000 years old practice, that all of a sudden Gen Zs are showing interest in it. Could it be maybe because the life is putting too much pressure on them, they want to find a way to escape it, or maybe remedy it?
I would say both, but I think
But
as
you're so hopeful, you're saying, because they're so open-minded and they're so attracted to spirituality.
there's so many reasons. I cannot pinpoint to say this is the only reason,
Uh-huh.
or I think both, options that you brought up are valid. But I think us as collective, as humans, we are, especially with new generation, we are getting smarter, more conscious. I definitely see that with with the previous generation. I don't know. Let me ask you, do you see?
The way you said it, it was like just hitting me personally. We're becoming a smarter. Of course you do. And we know it in psychology. Actually, there is something we call it Flynn effect, that every 100 years, the IQ score goes 10 above. It no actually goes up 10 points.
Wow.
So that's a very interesting thing. So because uh, in IQ, usually 15 points is a one standard deviation, is a big deal. So after 200 years, people go like 20 points. It's like jumping up. So I'm sure you guys are getting smarter. I have no doubt about it. But the way I said it is that because smart is different, we have like a book smart, we have street smart, and we have EQ, emotional, right?
But
Intelligence.
we moved from my understanding and from what the study shows, we moved away from putting so much emphasis and attention to IQ now to EQ, right? A lot of companies even that they want to hire people, they care about if their employees have a higher EQ than an IQ. Am I right?
Well, it's more like a combination because EQ, someone, for example, as we know, a lot of successful entrepreneurs are on the spectrum, autism spectrum. And they are great in finding details and patterns to the point that you can't believe it. Anytime we write a report, God help us if it's an autism report, if we make one little mistake throughout the whole 50 pages of report, they find it. And they come back to us and say, oh, you forgot to put a comma there. It's like that good. But they are not emotionally so well versed. So we see people like, for example, Elon Musk that said that I'm in the spectrum, Bill Gates. These are really people that are very smart per IQ, but not necessarily EQ is not high because people on the spectrum are not really good about the emotional connection with people and with empathy. So it depends on the company, I guess. If they want to recruit artists, they can go with EQ. But if they really want hard worker people that would not take vacations and they find details and mistakes, they usually go with the IQ still, as far as I know.
Can we go a little deeper into this?
Absolutely.
So I'm not 100% sure, so I'm trying to maybe see if you know any, or if you have any insight into this. You brought up empathy, and what I'm trying to get with this question with you is IQ is not something that we learn, it's
Yes,
probably genetic, right?
absolutely. It's like a
But
processor. We are born with it.
perfect. But EQ can be taught and can be learned, right? So that emotional intelligence or empathy in some ways maybe can be trained or can be, taught. Am I wrong or am I?
Yes and no, because you're absolutely right in regard to parenting and environment that can actually help and allow someone to develop certain things. But there are also usually in our field, we look at biopsychosocial aspects. Biology is something that we are born with it. So someone that is neurodivergent, like someone who's on the spectrum, there are certain limitations that they are born with it that does not allow them to really connect to certain aspects that you and I easily connect and empathize with others. So if they detect it very early on, there is a big chance of attending to it. Like if they know that I'm on the spectrum when I'm 4 years old, yes, there is a chance that they help me understand. But really, the difference is how the brain is hardwired a lot of times. So, and I wouldn't say an healthy, I would say a normal brain, average humanity people, their brain is hardwired different than neurodivergent individuals. Like people that have ADHD or some learning disorders or being on the spectrum. So inherently, they're a lot more limited in regard to making certain neuron connections. So that is something different. They might learn it. And you see sometimes when they work in therapy that they learn how to respond to social cues. But even when they do, you see it's not genuine. I mean, with all due respect, they do it and they function. But deep inside, they're struggling. They don't like it. They say, I'd rather go home and focus on something than being in this big group and pretend that I'm having a great time or try to be listening to someone, empathize with that person. And that's why they're really good at doing science, math, engineering. They're really good at it. And it doesn't mean that they are not, they are actually the most successful people. Looking at it, they're really on top of the food chain. But not necessarily like us being interested in art and philosophy and maybe certain nuances. I don't know if I was even able to address what you asked for.
No, you did. It's, I think it's very interesting and in some ways beautiful where we are as a society, that we can acknowledge these differences and we can maybe guide the
Yeah,
younger into what works for them
exactly.
and how they can be successful. Where my generation, my parents were like, no, you got to go to school, you got to study math and science. And, there wasn't any other option,
Yeah,
like it's, school, I always say maybe it's same thing as mindfulness. It's not,
not for everyone.
not for everyone,
Exactly.
and I think you and I, we had previous conversation, and I like that you are very adaptive to this, and you say we all live on a spectrum,
Hmm.
so,
Exactly.
being open, I think, and, you know, I practice this is spiritual practice of form and formless, looking at life as a dance, someday you want to go towards being a form. It's kind of like, what we, the way you spoke, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, that, for me, I'm still trying to figure out who I am
Absolutely.
and, understand that there is going to be changes. I might not be the same person I am, 6 months from now,
Hmm.
or I can learn through science and through human behavior that maybe this job is not the right job for me, and I can shift to a different
Yes.
career path,
Yes.
which is really good. So, in some ways, I would say, to answer your question, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think we are doing better as a collective. We are more understanding. I think what you said, even in a group setting, when that person with a, I don't want to call it a disorder, but they say, with the limitation, can acknowledge that I can maybe fake this emotion. I think that's huge, to say I can maybe really feel empathy, but I can act it. I think that's some sort of a breakthrough, to
Mm.
say, I, maybe I don't understand what they're going through, but it must be hard. And maybe I can hold a little bit of a passion and
Hmm.
compassion for this person. I think that's improvement for us as a society.
Yeah, so you see, I really like what you said. And I know you're a very optimistic individual, and I like that about you, genuinely, knowing you for so many years. But genuinely, you feel like that collective is you collectively you're doing better.
Yeah, I mean, I want to open up the conversation and get into politics and things like that with you right now, but I'm looking at, I mean, any political movement right now, it's
Mhm.
happening through the younger generation in US or outside of US. And I think as we growing older, we play it a little bit more safe
Yeah.
because we either have family or kids
Yes.
responsible.
Mhm.
So we sit back. So it's the younger generation that is making this movement. It's, the Gretas of this world that are jumping on a ship, and they're really putting their life into danger, or,
And it
you know,
always has been like that. Don't you think that usually the big things happening in the hands of the certain age, the younger generations, not the old, because older ones are always, no matter when we look back, they always had problem with the youngers. Oh, during our time, things were not like this. So maybe I'm sounding like an old man just complaining about the youngsters are doing different. But I think what you're saying is good, and I'm glad to hear that because I trust your judgment. You know better. You're in the group of people, that youngsters, and seeing what they're doing. But from outside, it seems like we don't see as much. But then I could be like my grandpa that would say, "Oh my God, you guys have no clue what you're doing." Speaking of apps, you mentioned, are there? I think it would be very helpful for our listeners. Are there any apps that you recommend for mindfulness that people can really use and utilize?
before we move on to that, I want to add something to what you just said. And I don't see you as an older generation or as an old man, but I think it's really important to recognize the wisdom of the elders. And as if younger people are listening to this podcast or anybody listening that is younger than us, I want to make sure that that is very valuable. And I think as a society and in many cultures and many countries, we're not putting a lot of attention to that. And I think it's something that we need to have as a combination to the younger intelligence. I think it's the younger intellectual intelligence combination that works with the older wisdom for a healthy society. Just wanted to wrap that up to say it's really important. I think it's needed.
I really hope people listen to this. Can we bookmark this part of this episode? Because I want everybody to listen to that, because I don't think it's happening enough. But you're absolutely right. That's what would be genuinely helpful, because the youngsters' abilities, new perspective, fresh perspective, and mixing it with the old wisdom, that's the way to go. But hopefully people listen and follow that.
I hope so. We can maybe put this on the social media so people can
But
pay
just, take that part out and put it there so people can listen to
We
it.
call the wisdom keepers. That's the term that I've
See, I love the way you think. You even came up with a name to cut it.
No, it's a new name that I learned. Wisdom keepers. That's what I guess refers to. Yeah, to the elders with knowledge. To answer your question, there's so many apps out there. I would say find an app that works for you, or find a teacher. It's very interesting the way we work with meditation. So we're so sensitive, when it comes to people's voices or faces. So you have to find someone you can connect with. So my recommendation is jump on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, wherever you can get some guided meditation, and listen and see who speaks to your soul, who speaks to your intelligence, who is interesting that you want to sit and you want to probably meditate with their guided meditation every day. Some of the good apps, out there are Headspace, Calm. I think I gotta drop in my UCLA app.
Please do.
That we have. I believe there's more than 17 languages.
Wow, that's great.
I always say, as a Iranian American, as a Farsi speaker, if anybody wants Farsi guided meditation, UCLA is the only one that has it at this point. And also it's free, by the way, so you don't have to pay for it.
Wow.
Dr. Kabat-Zinn has his own app that I use here and there. Sometimes I jump on SoundCloud and I listen to Ram Dass's guided meditation. So have fun, play, and see what works for you. But yeah, there's so many great apps out there. I would say try and see how it speaks to you.
Great. And then, in order for some of our listeners to take more from this episode, would you be able to give them something short, something like a practice or recommendation?
Yeah. Find a space in your room that feels safe for you. It feels quiet. It's not too much distraction. Start with 5 minutes a day. Just pay attention to your, breath. Breath is the best anchor and tools that we have. Just, see how you're breathing, and whenever you get distracted by thoughts, bring your attention kindly, non-judgmentally, by staying curious into your breath. And just know that this takes time, and, be patient with yourself. Be kind, be loving. Know that it's not easy. And see, how it goes for you. Don't give up. Most people do give up right at the beginning, but just remember, if you start going to the gym, you're not going to have muscles and definition, after 2 weeks. So the important is, we call the practice, to have a practice, find a day that works the best for you. If it's in the morning, midday, this could be done in your car, could be before your Zoom meeting or after your Zoom meeting. Really find what works the best for you. Sit in a straight position. If you have any condition that you can't physically sit, then it's okay to lay down. but be alert. It's okay. Some people say, "Oh, I'll fall asleep." It's all right.
It happens,
It
right?
happens. You might be tired, but try to stay awake for that 5 minutes. Try to kind of put the work into it. Really try to focus for that 5 minutes and see if you can stick to your breath and breathing. And, take it from there. Allow yourself to discover things. That's one of the things I like to tell people. We, as a society, I feel like we're so right now intelligence to go on how does this work, how does this needs to be done. Find what works for you. Allow your own intelligence to unfold and shine. And yeah, know that this takes time. Know that you have to be patient with yourself the same way you're patient with your kids if you have kids, when they start drawing or painting or whatever that might be. But yeah, guided meditation is really good to start with, and then you can learn eventually to practice on your own. I think it's really great. You and I, we keep talking about, this community and collective. Sitting together is really important. Having a support group, having people that they want to learn about meditation just like you, or maybe they have a practice and you can have their support to do this in a group. I think one of the reasons that I was really successful in doing this, that when I started it, I was in a studio, I was sitting with people, and there was a
Uh-huh.
communication afterwards. I realized a lot of my struggles is very universal. Everybody is experiencing
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah.
So it made it more and normalize it for me to know, okay, I'm not the only one having a hard time with meditation. Everyone does. So yeah, that's what comes up to me.
Thank you, Mahyar. This was great. I'm really thankful that you, for once at least, sit in front of camera. We are thankful to you and all your hard work. All the episodes and everything is because of your hard work. Thank you for being here today, and I hope we can do this more in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for knowing the value and putting some light on mindfulness meditation, because I know you come from a caring place as a practitioner, being a doctor, and like you said, this is one of the tools, and hopefully we can create a practice, create a community, bring this into our community here in Orange County to help people that are curious, are struggling,
Mhm.
are suffering, and know that this tool is available. And you've been a great support. So thank you for, spending this time to talk to me and, you know, um, bringing mindfulness into people's homes and attention.
And if people want to know more about you, do you have a website or pages that people can look and follow?
Yeah, I think we're gonna put the my website on the show notes, responsibilitytoawe.com. I'm on social media. You can find me. My Instagram is the one that I'm really active, is Mahyar, Mahyar. And yeah, those are the two. And all, you can, reach out to me through my email and my website.
All right.